Hello, everybody. Welcome to Management. So I am David Warner, and this is our first video lecture. So let's get right into it. Now, we haven't met before, and it's kind of frustrating that we're not going to meet in person right now, maybe a little later in the semester. We will see how things play out, but we will meet in the tutorials. So let's jump right in. What we're going to do in this lecture is we're going to discuss the basics of management, we'll discuss the introduction, and we'll also discuss how we're going to run this class, being that it is an online class. So management is a very important topic to me. It's a topic that I enjoy teaching. I've taught it for quite a few years, and it's a topic that I think is really critical to understand as you begin the road towards business, whether it's being a manager, opening your own business, or being an employee in a business. So the idea of management is really about knowing yourself. That's really how I see it. Managers, they get things done. And on the one hand, they need to do things themselves, but really management is in some ways the art of getting things done through other people. And because of that, it's such a critical subject to understand. And what we really talk about a lot in this course is the idea of managing yourself, which I think is actually a pretty important idea right now in the world. So let me give you a quick background first on who I am, since we haven't met before. So as I said, my name is David, and you can call me David. There's no need to call me Mr. Warner or Professor or Sir, though you can if you want to. I won't deny you the opportunity to make me feel good, but you are welcome to call me David. And I am from New York. That is where I am right now. I'm in an apartment in Manhattan. And despite whatever you've seen on the news, Manhattan is okay. But yeah, I'm in an apartment in Manhattan. Nobody's here. It's just me. And that's good and bad. And so I'm, born and raised in New York. I was raised in the suburbs outside Manhattan. Then I lived in Manhattan, lived in Brooklyn for a while. I am a licensed lawyer. So I went to law school at University of Hawaii. I specialized in East Asian law, Chinese law. In university, I specialized in Chinese and music. Those were my major and minor. And I also studied economics with a focus on Chinese culture. And in law school, like I said, I focused on Chinese law. And then I have lived in China for 13 years, 2 years outside Shanghai and the rest all in Shanghai, maybe 14 years by now, a long time. I've been in China for quite a long time. I do speak some Chinese. My experience in China has been primarily teaching. I've always taught. Prior to teaching at Donghua University, I was the senior lecturer in law and sociology at the Shanghai Ligong Daxue, which is the Sino-British University, SBC, if you know it. It's another international university in Shanghai. There, I was mostly teaching Chinese students. They had maybe, 5% foreign students. And then I left that. They stopped teaching law, and so I decided not to continue. They wanted me to teach economics, but I chose to go to the television industry because my hobby, or I can't say second career, but sort of my hobby is I work a lot with theater groups, and I've worked with TV shows, movie companies, the entertainment sector in China. Primarily, I'm a theater teacher. I have taught classes at Shanghai Theater Academy. I teach in Chinese. I've run my own theater group for many, many years. And some of my actors have gone on to be quite famous. And so I've worked with a variety of organizations, groups. I've worked with big groups. I've worked with Tencent and Sohu and Alibaba. So I've worked with some big names doing theater. And so a lot of what I know from my direct experience about management, about working in groups, and about law and contracts has to do with the entertainment industry in China. So I come at it from, my own perspective. We all have our different ways of managing, and, I have my own way of managing myself, which is stuff we're going to talk about in this class. Things like time management. I think right now in your lives, time management is critical. This is really a time to start to figure out time management. And time management doesn't mean I'm going to get up early or I'm going to do a lot today or from 8 to 9 I'm going to study. I mean, it really is, it's mapping out your time. It's using paper. It's really figuring out, using charts and diagrams and structure and plans. And it's a kind of management. You know, managers definitely are not just people who tell someone what to do. That's a terrible manager. And most of you guys probably haven't worked yet. I'm sure some of you have, but you know, when you start working full time, you really will see what a good manager does. In fact, I said I also teach sociology. I teach organizational behavior. And studies have shown that the #1 reason people quit their job is because they have a bad relationship with their manager. That's #1. #2, people quit their job because they have a bad relationship with coworkers. You see the trend here? It's not about money. You know, it's most people don't quit their job over money. Most people quit their job over relationships. And #1 is the manager. If the manager doesn't treat people well, or people don't like the manager, they don't get along with the manager, then the manager is going to have a real struggle retaining control. So what we're talking about here is this idea of planning, right? Management definitely involves planning. It involves what's the best way. It involves getting somewhere. You know, getting things done. These are all ideas of management. So today's class. Now, I understand that usually we have about 17 weeks, and usually this is a 2-credit class. We meet for 90 minutes. I usually don't give a break, not for a 90-minute class. I'm pretty old school that way. When I teach law, it's 2.5 hours. So, you know, I'll give a 10-minute break or something. But for 90 minutes, usually there's no break. And so I will try to limit my weekly lectures to around 90 minutes. Sometimes I'll split it into 2 lectures. It might be as much as an hour each. To me, that's normal. I know different teachers are doing it differently this semester. For me, I will always be doing these video lectures, which you can watch whenever you want, but you should watch them. And then we will also have a once-a-week tutorial. But let's get into that with the procedural introduction. What's the procedure for how we're going to do the class this semester? Then we'll do the substantive introduction, which is what is the substance, the content that we will learn this semester. And then we'll start our first subject, which is an introduction to management. And you will see throughout this semester that I am obviously pretty obsessive compulsive about trying to draw straight lines. And so I will constantly be drawing these lines and erasing them. If there's anything I've learned from teaching law online for the last 6 weeks, it's that I keep erasing these lines on my PPTs. So, format of the class. You know, how are we going to do this class, being that it's online, being that we've never met, because I have to make sure you're learning what I'm teaching. I can't just wait until the end of the semester, give you a test, and find out that you all failed. How are we going to do this class? Well, I have found in order to successfully teach online, there is no integrated platform yet that really works. I need a combination. I need Blackboard so I can give you homework and quizzes and content, and so you can submit the things to me with a time date. I need YouTube so that I can send you these videos and you can watch them. I need Zoom so that we can have our live tutorials. And I need WeChat so that you can send me messages and I can give you updates, even telling you like what is the Zoom room number, things like that. We need WeChat. So we need all 4 of these platforms. As I said, we're going to have both lectures and tutorials. We will have probably 2 video lectures per week. Each one will, I would guess, be about an hour. You know, this is a truncated semester, which means shortened. So a shortened semester, truncated. And we only have 12 weeks, and that includes our final exam. So our final exam is in the week of July 4th, right? So I think our final class is July 3rd. That means in that final week, we need to have our final exams, which means we really have 10 weeks, because in week 11, we should be doing a review. So that is quick. I'm used to having 17 weeks. And in case you hadn't noticed, I talk fast, I have a lot to say, and I usually use every minute of those 17 weeks. So while I can try to cut out some subject, really what I'm going to do is compress some of them. This is a lot of work. You know, it's a lot of work for both of us. It could be worse The fact that you are getting to take this exam at home really means that I have no choice but to make this an open book final, which I have never done. I do that in some classes, particularly in HRM and human resource management, which I also teach. I usually do an open book final. And I'll tell you, open book finals are not necessarily easier, but they benefit a certain type of person. You know, with an open book final, you don't need to memorize. There's nothing you need to memorize. So for people who are bad at memorizing, open book finals are fantastic. However, for people who are bad at organizing, open book finals are tough. Because since it's open book, I will expect you to have access to everything we learn this semester, everything I teach you. And if you're totally disorganized and you just have a big stack of pages and you have to flip through them, you'll never be able to do a good job on the final. Since I know it's open book, I'm going to give you a lot more information that needs to be processed. There will be homework once a week. Generally, it's not really homework, it's a quiz. The homework will be, I need you to read the textbook, and don't worry, I'm going to give you a free PDF of the textbook. So I need you to read the chapter, and then I'm going to quiz you to see if you understood what we did. If you're not reading the chapter, then you will probably fail the quiz. Doesn't mean you'll fail the class. You could fail the quizzes and still pass my class. But if you're not reading the textbook and you're not taking notes, then it's going to be hard to pass. This is not that hard a class, I'll be honest with you. Law class is hard. If you ask anybody, that's my hardest class. HRM, Human Resource Management, it's a lot of information, but it's open book. It's not that hard a class. Organizational behavior is a little harder. That's a 3-credit class. It's more information, and I expect more group work because it's organizational behavior. It's about how people work together in groups. This is management. Obviously, my goal is not to fail you. My management class has about a 96% pass rate. So pretty much in my experience, everybody who comes to class, watches the videos or comes to class and takes notes, pretty much passes my management class. So if you don't do the coursework, I guarantee you'll fail. Of those 4% or 3% that fail my class, it's the students who didn't do the coursework, because that's 30%. And then you would need really almost an excellent grade, because you need a 60 to pass, and it's almost impossible. And the coursework is easy. So the people who don't do the coursework, I know right then and there that they're probably going to fail. And then the final exam is not really meant to be that hard, but it will test everything. For communication, we will use WeChat. For notifications, we will use Blackboard. But anything I need you to know, see, I keep fixing the line. I just love when the lines are straight. Okay. So this is an online course, obviously, right? So we're going to discuss the textbook, and I will give you related readings. Most of the readings I give you are from Harvard Business Review. Some are from New York Times or Wall Street Journal, but primarily Harvard Business Review. The homework readings are important if you care. Look, if you just want to get a diploma and you want to graduate because you need that piece of paper in order to get a job, okay, there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing wrong with being honest about that. You don't have to pretend you're going to school because you want to know as much as you can. Some people go to school for the diploma, and that's okay. I'm a big believer. Now, I happen to go to a very difficult college. My university was rated the most homework of any university in America. And I'm very proud to say we were rated the #1 dork school by Playgirl magazine. So everybody at my school, the cool place to be was the library. And then I went to law school and everybody just spent all their time in the library. Actually, except me, I did a lot of theater back then also. But, so I believe in studying for studying. I like that. I like learning. These days, I've been spending a lot of my time for the last 1.5 years studying trading and finance just because I like learning, So I'm a big believer in learning. And as somebody who's been a director of TV shows in China, I understand that management is not something that you're born with. Some people are, good leaders. You can be born with certain leadership traits, and we will talk about that later in this semester, what it means to be a leader. But leaders and managers aren't exactly the same. It would be nice if all managers were good leaders, but they don't have to be. Management is something you can really learn. And these readings that I give you, not just the textbook. The textbook will teach you the science of management. The readings that I give you are chosen, and most of them, a lot of them, come from a scientist named Drucker. Okay, Joseph Drucker? I'm forgetting his first name. But Drucker was like the father of modern management. And he has some really interesting things to say about being a good manager. It's just incredibly important to be a good manager, whether it's in your family, in your friend group, in business, in any area of life. Being a good manager is really something you can learn. So like I said, I expect you to watch the videos, to come to the tutorials, or watch the tutorial videos. Every time we have a tutorial, they will be recorded. I do not take attendance, or I do, but just because I want to know who's coming. You do not get an attendance grade for the tutorials. If you don't watch them, I'll know because I say things in the tutorials that then you wouldn't put on your coursework because you didn't know. So, and you're expected to do the readings because I don't know how you're going to pass without that. As I said, the readings come from the textbook and from other articles, particularly from the Harvard Business Review. It's a lot of work. It is. That's university. This is really just an exercise in time management. It's not a crazy amount of work. You know, you'll see when for you guys who haven't started working yet, what it means to do an 8-hour day or a 10-hour day. When I was a lawyer working on Wall Street before I realized I hate being a lawyer working on Wall Street. No fun at all, because that's just not my personality. You know, I don't care if I have like an expensive watch. I'm not even wearing a watch. You know, I'm just not that kind of person who needs to wear like a $3,000 suit or anything. And that's the kind of people I was around. And so I didn't like it. I'm much happier teaching law than being a lawyer. And I love being a manager. Teaching management is interesting too. But what am I talking about? Why am I bragging about working on Wall Street? There must be a reason. Harvard Business Review, time management. Oh, that's it. You'll see when you get into the real world that working 10 or 8 hours a day is a lot more work than you guys are doing right now. And I understand it just takes an incredible amount of focus to read a textbook for 2 hours. But that's why we need time management. You know, you guys can try the Pomodoro method where you study for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, and then take like a 15-minute break or something like that. You got to find your own way to learn, because I guarantee learning doesn't stop. You know, not for good managers. And I'm not saying I'm a good manager, but I am saying I'm somebody who believes in lifelong learning. Learning doesn't stop, but you really have to figure out how to match your schedule to what you need to get done. So Blackboard, everything about the course will be on Blackboard. So on Blackboard in the content section, and they haven't uploaded this class yet to Blackboard. I keep asking the school to do that, but I'm sure they will very soon. So I have your email addresses. I'm going to send you a personal email probably right after I finish this video, and I'll include the link to this. But typically on Blackboard, we'll have a content session, and every week I'm going to update our class videos and our tutorials. I'll give you the PDF textbook that'll be in the content section, the PPTs that we talk about in class, the readings that I want you to do, and any discussion questions. I like to have discussion questions. Those are not homework. You don't need to prepare those. There's something where if you're reading the textbook, you could think about them. If you have any questions, you can ask. And then when we're in the tutorial, I'll go over the PPT quickly, but my tutorial is not me teaching you this PPT. That's what this video is. This is me teaching you this PPT. In the tutorial, we'll review it briefly, but if you come to the tutorial and you didn't watch this video, you will probably fail the class, right? I'm not using the tutorial to teach you. The tutorial is targeted, focused time to review a couple of things that I think are important on the PPT to make sure you got the key ideas to talk about your coursework and then to discuss the questions from the reading. This video you have to watch. We will have a discussion section in Blackboard, and there'll be weekly topic-based discussions. If you have questions, you can post the questions there. You can also WeChat me, but for students who want to ask me a bigger question, you know, I want you to put it in the discussion section so that I can answer it and we can talk about it in our tutorial and all the students can see the discussion. The discussions help everybody. The homework section, like I said, we're not going to have any weekly homework except for the readings. And then the quiz section, I will have this weekly quiz that's going to be 10% of your grade. And I do that for two reasons. One, it helps me to know, are you learning, right? Are you learning what I'm teaching? I really need to know that. And two, the midterm and the final exam, I'm taking a lot of my questions from the quiz I make. So the quiz is kind of it's a way for you to earn a grade twice. You know, if you do the quiz, you're going to get some points for your final grade, and the questions you do on the quiz, which we will talk about in the tutorial, those are the same kind of questions that I'm going to put on the coursework in the final exam. So it really is to your benefit to do them. It seems like it's a lot of work now, but it's going to save you time later, and it will improve your grade. The room code for Zoom will always be this. I don't think it should change. This is my personal room code. So it'll always be this. I'll let you know if it changes. YouTube is what I use for our class videos. If for some reason you can't access YouTube, let me know and we'll try to figure it out. I have tried previously to use some Chinese Dropbox things. Like I have Baiyun, the Baidu Yunpan. I have, that's Baidu's. I have Weiyun, that's Weixin's Yunpan. So I have some of these cloud drives, but there were all kinds of problems with using them. They just kept locking people out and stuff. Zoom and YouTube just seem to be way better platforms. And then we'll use WeChat for basic communications. There will be one subject per week, and I'm going to put that into, I'll try to keep it to 2 videos. There's no reason for us to really have 3, as much as I love to hear myself talk. And it'll be about an hour each. I expect if it's usually a 90-minute class for 17 weeks, we have 10 weeks. I think I could get it done probably in 2 videos per week, maybe. We'll see. So as I said, we usually meet 90 minutes a week. The videos will take that into account. I strongly recommend taking notes while you watch this. That's what I make students do when we're in class. I won't let students come to class with no notebook or computer. I will not let them. I'll make them leave the class, you know, or find paper and pen. I don't care if you're lying to me and you're, you know, but you have to be taking notes. You will fail if you don't. Like, there's just too much information for you to think in the last week I'm going to print out all of the PPTs and somehow remember it all. Like, it's too much. You got to learn to take notes. Textbook. Okay, this is a classic textbook that we're using called Management by Robbins and Coulter. Robbins and Coulter is one of the classic standard textbooks for management. I have a PDF copy that I was able to get for free. Shh, don't tell anybody. And I will put that on our content area of Blackboard so you can download it. This is where the readings come from. You do have to read it. Look, if you don't read it, you can still pass. I have no reason to pretend that you have to read it or you'll fail, because the stuff we're doing in the PPTs in these video lectures really follows the textbook. I don't follow in chronological order. I don't teach chapter 1, then chapter 2, then chapter 3, then chapter 4. Sometimes I jump, and I'll always tell you, you know, for the next video, we're going to do chapter 8, or we're going to do chapter 6, or I jump around in the book, but everything we learn in the PPT is also in the book. So yeah, you could say it's a little redundant, kind of repeating yourself. If you want to do well in this class, then read the textbook and watch the videos. If you just want to pass, you can by just watching the videos. You know, be honest about that. Homework, like I said, it's just going to be readings. The readings are not graded. I'm not giving you a grade on did you read this Harvard Business Review thing. We will talk about it during the tutorial. So if you don't read it, you're kind of just wasting a little bit of your own time, because we will talk about it. You do need to watch it, and you'll probably be confused if you didn't read it. Also, they're not that long. They're like 10 pages usually, 8 pages, you know, they're not really that long. And as someone who wants to be a manager, you guys are choosing to go to a business school. As someone who wants to do business, you kind of should get in the habit of reading, just figuring out what you like to read. Whether it's Harvard Business Review or Wall Street Journal or New York Times or what else do I read? You know, these days I've been looking at more finance stuff, more market-based, Yahoo Finance, and you know, but there's articles that CNN, whatever it is you like to read, you should be reading something every week. That's pretty important. So I choose Harvard Business Review as a good place to start, and then you guys figure out what works for you. Okay, the grades in this class. I'm going to give you 10% on those quizzes. But like I said, all the stuff that's on the quizzes is also going to be on the coursework and final. So this 10%, if you do it, is kind of a gift. The coursework. Now, what I usually have done in the past, let's talk about it in a second, but what I usually have done is I ask the students to interview a manager. And it's a pretty easy coursework assignment. I just want you to find a manager who's not in your family. You can't interview your aunt or your uncle or your parents, but some manager. And the thing is, in China, in Shanghai, that works out really well for students who really try. Because as a foreigner in Shanghai, you really can call up Nike and say, hey, I'm a student in business school in Shanghai. Is it possible to talk to a manager? And you can actually get meetings with these like really high level marketing manager, advertising managers, really senior managers that if you were in New York City and you tried to go to Nike corporate headquarters and say like, hi, I'm a student. I'm a college student. Can I talk to your manager? They'd be like, no. Why did you think you could? You know, our managers are very important people and they're busy and they're not going to talk to college students. It's like in America, that's not going to happen. In China, you really can. Now, this is going to be different this semester. So I'm trying to think about it right now. I'll tell you my thoughts in a minute. Then the final exam is the big one. That's 60%. Anybody who's from like France or Europe would think that's crazy to give a 60% final test, but that's how we do it in America. So a 60% final exam. The final exam will cover the whole semester, and it's going to be short answer questions only. So what I usually do is I give a fact pattern. I give a story. And I'm going to give you examples of the final before we take it. We'll have a week to review where I'll give you, the final from a couple of years ago. I'll give you a few of them. We'll go through them together. But it's usually a story of somebody who's trying to open a business, and here's what happened, and they hired this person, they fired that person, they got this big order in, and how do they do this with this kind of management? What styles of leadership should they use? How can they make sure the new employees understand their company culture? Things like that. I'm going to give you a story and then ask you questions about the story. That's how I like to do it. So the coursework. Okay, so here's what I was saying. Generally, I like you to write about a manager, and for the moment, that's what I'm going to stick with. I'm going to give you a choice. Would you like to interview a real-life manager? And you can find a real-life manager in wherever you are. But there's also a good chance that you're not allowed to leave your house and that won't work. And so in that case, you could read websites or books and give me a report about a manager who interests you. I'd like you to understand that one of the important things about management is such an individual thing. It's really about knowing yourself. You just can't tell other people what to do if you don't do it yourself. You can't tell other people to come on time if you're late. You can't tell other people to work hard if you're lazy. It just doesn't work. And so management is really about understanding ourselves, and it's such an individual pursuit that one of the best things we can do as managers is to read biographies about the great managers, the Lee Iacocca's of the world, the Sir Richard Branson, the Bill Gates, the managers who've made differences in the world and how they do things. Because you have to understand, every great leader is a manager. Not every manager is a leader, but every great leader is a manager. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, Napoleon, Mao Zedong, these are all managers. They were also leaders, and they delegated a lot of authority to other people, but people chose to follow them, and it's not because they were total hypocrites. So we want to really understand some managers. Now, I might decide that this is just too much for you guys and maybe just give you a written coursework midterm where it's just questions about what we've done so far. And we'll see. I think we can talk about that in the tutorial. I'm open to suggestions. As a lawyer, I love to negotiate. If you want to negotiate a certain kind of coursework, hey, I'm open to that. I love it. So bring it. Final exam, that'll be in week 12. It is cumulative. It will cover everything we learn in the class, and it'll be short answer questions based on a story. Here's some of my information. You can always email me. This is my personal email. You can add me on WeChat if you want. I don't think there's a need for, my China phone doesn't work right now because I'm in America. I'm using a United States phone number. I guess you can call me if you want. Well, I mean, look, let me say that again. You can always call me. If you're stressing out and you don't want to talk about it over WeChat, you're freaking out, you're unhappy, that's so important to me. And I'll just be real for a second here. I've taught in the university system for over 10 years. And in that time, I have seen 3 or 4 students die. And I mean this seriously, like people die. And if you really live in China and you see Chinese kids, like the pressure that people put on themselves or that their families put on them is insane sometimes. And it could be the pressure that's given to us by our family, our society, or it could be the pressure we give ourselves. And it's very important for me to tell you right from the very beginning, what we're doing here is called false pressure. It's not real. Real pressure is if you're living on the street and you're homeless and you need a place to live, or you have no money for food, or you have no money at all to pay for a hospital, but your family is sick, or there are things in life that are real, where the stress is real and you can't just walk away from it. You could fail out of university and have a fantastic life. And anybody who tells you you can't hasn't read many biographies of great leaders. Your education is important. Don't get me wrong. I'm a strong believer in education, but it's not what defines happiness. Happiness has very little to do with education. Happiness, according to sociological studies, has very little to do with earnings. For people who earn below the poverty level, who earn $10,000, I'm talking American dollars, $10,000, $12,000 a year, they're below the poverty level. They can barely afford to live and eat. Getting up to around $40,000, 40, means a lot. People will work a lot. It increases your economic utility of happiness. Now, for people who earn around $40,000, that's enough to live in America, but you can't necessarily buy a house. You can rent. It's enough to go on vacation, but vacation close to home. It's enough to buy a car, but not a great car. From 40 to 80,000, studies have shown, increases people's happiness about one time. If you get from 40 to 60, you're like, yes, now I can take a vacation to Jamaica instead of to Jamaica, New York. I can take a vacation to Hawaii instead of to Texas. Or some other place close by. When you get to 80,000, that's another level in society in America, because at that point you should be able to buy a house. You should be able to put money away for retirement, have a 401k, have retirement packages. You should be able to buy good health insurance. You should be at a very good standard. However, studies have shown above $80,000 a year, it doesn't actually increase happiness very much. From 80,000 to 1 million, happiness doesn't even increase double. It's just in studies, because once you have 80,000, you can buy a nice car. Well, you have 1 million, you can buy a nicer car. You can buy 5 nicer cars. But that stuff doesn't increase happiness. In fact, according to sociology, what increases happiness is experiences, not objects. Right? So if I really have some money and I want to buy this new iPhone, and it's an iPhone X, and I'm so excited. So I buy the iPhone X today, and then, this isn't an iPhone X, but I buy an iPhone X today. I'm so excited, and I love it. It brings me so much happiness. But in 2 years, I might throw this on the table and be like, hey, nephew, do you want a new phone? Because now I want the iPhone XX. I mean, this is 2 years old. Who cares? Your happiness goes way down. However, let's say you spend your money taking all of your classmates that you missed from primary school on a vacation, and it costs you the same as an iPhone X for a weekend. If you guys have a good time, you're going to probably remember that with the same level of happy memories for the rest of your life. It's like after 10 years, you won't look on that and think, oh, that was a happier memory 2 years ago. The happiness of memories doesn't go down. It stays level. So there's a lot of interesting stuff we learn as managers. That's motivation. And motivation, I choose to teach more in OB class than in management class, although there are chapters on it in the book. I usually teach it more in OB. But as a manager, you need to know what motivates people. Sometimes it's not money. Money is not the prime motivator. Depends how much money people earn and what they need it for. This has nothing to do with notifications. I don't know why I'm talking about this. Something about false stress. Don't get too stressed out. If you're failing your class, man, you got a long life ahead of you. Fail your class. So what? Call me, message me. I'll try to make it work. We'll see if we can find a way to make you pass. If you fail, no matter what anybody tells you, you could have a fantastic life. It's just not about that. It's about so many other things, that have to do with appreciating life. And I've seen students really take grades and courses a little too seriously. Like I said, I went to a college that incredibly stressed work. And then I went to law school where you have 6 hours of work a day outside class. So I'm used to doing a lot of studying and work. I believe in it. But I also recognize that's not a path to happiness, certainly not for everybody. Class rules. So the rules are different, obviously, because this is an online class than it would be normally. What I care about now is respect. You want to be a manager? I don't care what you're thinking in your head. I care what you say and how you act. If somebody's speaking during the tutorial and you're like, "Ugh, God, we know." I mean, that's not what a good manager would do. And I've had some terrible managers. One of the reasons I love CIP is that Yiling is a good manager. She really is. You guys are very lucky to have her as a manager, and I'm very lucky to have her as a boss. The whole administration is good. And so much of that comes from Yiling, who's the head of the administration. Just the fact that she sits at a desk in the corner of a room that has interns in it. Do you guys have any idea how rare that is in a university? Try to go see the president of Donghua and see if he sits in a room with interns in it. I guarantee you, he sits in a big room by himself. I'm almost sure it's a he, and that door is essentially guarded by secretaries, and you probably couldn't even get an interview if you wanted, let alone just walk in and talk to her. I mean, it's very cool and humble. She's a good manager. Now, as I said, if you can't do the work, you're having problems, you're stressed out, tell me, tell Mei Ling, tell someone. A problem shared is a problem halved. Don't try to keep this in. This is stressful. It's a stressful time in the world. It's a stressful time to be feeling forced to do work. It's a stressful time. I'm a very strong believer in meditation. I wish I could say I was a strong believer in exercise, and I'm trying. But I'm a strong believer in meditation. And I think that really does help people to calm down. Time management is something we need to learn. We're going to work on it together this semester, because if you can get your time management skills on lock right now, this is going to serve you so well for the rest of university and your business life. Okay, that's about 37 minutes, and that was our procedural introduction. Now let's talk about the substantive introduction. What are we going to do this semester? Well, we're going to organize this class in 4 categories: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So the difference between these things: first, we're going to spend quite a long time on planning. That's really the key idea for this course, is how do you plan work? As a manager, you need to figure out, okay, what tasks do we need to do to achieve our goal? Well, how do you even figure that out? Some people are comfortable sitting down with paper or computer. Other people just aren't organized like that. But the thing is, as a manager, you have to work with other people. So if you have a big plan that's all up here in your head, that doesn't work, because other people don't necessarily work that way. You have to have a system that other people can follow. And so that is the art of planning. And planning itself is so valuable. I knew a guy in Shanghai, he was a foreign guy, and he was not a very good employee. Nice guy. Not a very good employee, though. And he decided to spend a lot of time learning this one planning tool that we're going to talk about in this class, which has a lot to do with how do you write a business plan. And I'm sure you're going to see business plans in other classes, in Anselm's class or in Vance's class. We're going to talk a little about it in this class too, but there's a specific business plan format I like that is used for startups. And that's the one my friend was researching, called the business canvas model. And he just was like looking online, watching videos and writing, samples. He ended up being able to make up to 20,000 RMB per day. Now, that's not every day, because he had to go find clients. And, he was lucky if he got 2 or 3 workshops a month. But that's 2 or 3 days of working a month. I mean, he did a lot of work like at coffee shops preparing and everything, but 2 or 3 actual days for like $10,000 US a month. You can make so much money in China if you understand planning, because they don't. And I know that's wrong. I shouldn't say that they. Obviously, Alibaba is a well-run company-ish. I have some mixed feelings having worked with their entertainment division. But planning is something, this management, the way we're doing it, it's new in China. I mean, really new. Think about the fact that in China, the first law school, I know more about law, the first law school in China opened in 1986. 86. China has 5,000 years of history, and the first law school that actually planned, the legal education was 1986. Management is a really new subject here. Most people who open businesses, there is a really traditional management method where you have one boss and then everybody else is like a servant. Everybody, and I say master servant because that's how we say it in the law. I don't mean that badly. I mean master servant. That's how we say it. So you have one master who's like the manager, CEO, boss, king of the factory, and everybody else just does what they're told. Well, guess what? In a modern, effective, efficient business, it doesn't work that way. So you'll see in China, one of the common issues is that the employees have very little decision-making power. If they want to make a decision, they need to contact their boss, who contacts their boss, who contacts their boss, and it just goes up the chain because often the only person who is able to make a decision is someone who's at the top. Well, that really shows a lack of planning. Also a lack of organizing. Organizing is figuring out how you're going to get teams to accomplish goals. Teamwork is very new in China. So, the Chinese have a saying, I forget how to say it, but for a long time, China's done very, very well in sports that are one-on-one, like ping pong, where it's just one person representing themselves, or swimming, or gymnastics, or diving, things that are one person. But when you get a group together, like basketball, there tends to be a lot of problems because of the kind of lack of teamwork. You see the Gaokao, the Chinese entrance examination for universities. Students work like crazy. They work in a way that we in America could never even imagine, working 16 hours a day for a whole year to prepare for 1-2-day test. But they do it alone. There's a lot of solo work in China. And the whole, I talk more about China. I've lived in China for, 14, 13 years. So most of my experience in management is there. But generally, being able to organize is critical. We talk about this a lot in this class. We talk about it a lot in OB. Team-based management is really the most effective way to manage if you can do it. Many people can't, because managing a team is different than managing individuals. Leading, how to be a leader. We'll talk about that later in the course. And then finally, controlling. Controlling does not mean telling people what to do. Controlling does not mean controlling people's behavior. Controlling is the process of benchmarking. It means creating a quality standard. So let's say that my company makes these men's shirts, okay? And I have a benchmark for what's a good shirt. How did I get that? Well, I look at the other companies in the industry, the best practices, and I find, okay, this company makes top quality shirts. They last for a long time, but their colors fade. And this other company, they make shirts with beautiful colors, but they don't last as long. And then this other company, their buttons are just excellent. But, I just look at all the best practices. There are a lot of ways to find what is the best standard. We'll learn that later in the course. But with all of those, I create a benchmark for what's the perfect shirt. And then I have to see, in my company, are we meeting that standard? And if we're not, what's going wrong? Is there a problem with the dye and the colors we use? Is there a problem with the fabric? Is there a problem with the workers? Is there a problem with the machines? Is there a problem with my benchmark? Maybe my standard is just too high and we're never going to meet that standard. We're never going to be the best at everything. And maybe the problem is my benchmark as a manager. That is the process of controlling. Creating standards, measuring actual performance, comparing that to the standard, and then taking some kind of corrective action. That's controlling. So we're going to learn a bunch of subjects, right? Today we'll do in probably the next video. I think I'll cut this one at halftime and then do another video. So it'll be the introduction to management. Then our second week will be management theories. Third week, decision making. Fourth week, culture and environment. This is the context. If you're a manager, your outside context does mean something. Being a manager in a culture like China is different than being a manager in an environment like New York City. The cultures are different. The environments are different. Being a manager of a company like Bear Stearns, JP Morgan, Lehman Brothers, Price Waterhouse Cooper, these big, very old money, dark wood, masculine, male-oriented, big finance companies are very different than working in an organization that is extremely modern, like Canopy Growth, which is a marijuana company, or working in Starbucks, or working in even Alphabet, which is Google's company. Working in any of these different environments. Working in RJ Reynolds, which is a tobacco company from the late 1800s, to working in Facebook. It couldn't be more different, the environment. So being a manager, it doesn't just exist in a vacuum. We have to recognize that the environments are different in different companies and really understand culture. Culture is exceedingly important these days. Companies really want to have a company culture. So we need to not only know what that is, but how you create one as a manager. One of the things I struggle with at CIP, and this is all throughout China, this is definitely not just CIP, is they often lack a visual culture. There's no artifacts, would be how I would say it in sort of management speak. It's like if you come into a lot of Chinese schools, it's just white walls everywhere. I love the fact that CIP put up those photographs of different people, because generally, and maybe you guys haven't even seen it yet, but CIP has some photographs and stuff of different cultures. At least that would show somebody coming in what we are. CIP is the single most diverse place I've ever worked in my life. And that diversity is absolutely fantastic. Really important. Something you might never experience again. And so the culture of CIP is very international. But many places in China, if you go in, it's just white walls. Nothing, everything just looks impersonal. And that really tells you a lot about a culture. Then I'm going to put 5 and 6 together, I think, for 1 week. We'll talk a little about globalization. I don't want to talk about that too much, but I do want to talk about social responsibility. As a manager these days especially, that really matters, particularly for attracting younger workers, for attracting millennials and Gen Alpha. And, I'm Gen X. You guys are probably millennials. And so we need to understand those generations because they're honestly really different. What baby boomers, which is above my generation, what they want, what Gen Y wants, which is after my generation, what millennials think is valuable and what a Gen Xer thinks is valuable, really very different. And a good manager understands that. Then we'll really get into what is planning. And with that, we'll learn the planning tools, strategic management, and the planning tools are all part of planning, strategy, planning tools. Then we'll get into, I think we're going to jump over some of this, because this is really organizational behavior stuff. Then we'll get into leaders, controlling, and operations. If there's time at the end, we will talk a little about entrepreneurial. But behavior and HR I'll save for HR class. Behavior I'll probably save for OB class. Okay, so today, what are we going to do? Let's talk about chapter 1 of the book, but we're almost at 50 minutes. So I'd say let's take a break now and go get yourself, a cup of coffee, go to the bathroom, do whatever you want to do, and let's come back and do this in the second video. I will see you guys very soon.